Hello everyone. On this video we will be going over just some extra examples for using basic differentiation rules. Alright, so for the first example, we'll see what is the derivative of f of x equals negative 2 over 5 times x to the 3/4 power at the point x equals 1. Alright, so just rewriting our function, f of x equals negative 2/5 x to the 3/4 power. Okay, so to find our derivative, you have our constant right here. We can just pull that out to the front. So you have negative 2/5. But now we just have to multiply that by the derivative of x to the 3/4 power. Alright, let me bring this up a little bit. So yeah, f prime of x is going to equal negative 2/5. The derivative of x to the 3/4 power, remember we get our exponent, bring it down to the front. And then we subtract 1. Okay, so we end up with f prime of x is equal to negative 2 times 3 is negative 6. So here we have negative 6 over 20. X to the 3 over 4 minus 1. That's 3 over 4 minus 4 over 4, which is negative 1 over 4. So you have negative 1/4. Or we can go ahead and simplify that. Fraction, so our derivative is equal to negative 3/10 times x to the negative 1/4. Okay, now we found our derivative, we go ahead and plug in our 1. So when x is equal to 1, your derivative, or x is equal to 1, so we go ahead and replace that 1. So f prime of 1 is equal to negative 3/10 times 1 to the negative 1/4 power. 1 to any power is just going to be 1. So we end up with negative 3/10. Alright, so if you are still writing, feel free to press pause, but we're going to go ahead and move on to our next example. Okay, so what if we let the function h of x equals negative 2x squared plus x plus 4 all over x squared plus 4x minus 1. So what is h prime of x? Well, in other words, the derivative of h of x. All right, we bring that down. Okay, so we know, what if we let, well, I'll rewrite it first, kind of clear everything up. Equals negative 2x squared plus x plus 4 all over x squared plus 4x minus 1. Remember, this is your f of x in the numerator, and this is your g of x in the denominator. Okay, so first thing we have to do is find the derivative of both of those. So f prime of x, if we bring down the 2, negative 2 times 2 is negative 4, so you have negative 4x. Derivative of x is just 1, and derivative of 4 is just 0. So derivative of our denominator Derivative of x squared is 2x. Derivative of 4x, well, derivative of x is just 1, so 4 times 1 is 4. And the derivative of 1, or minus 1, is just 0. Alright, so now we can go ahead and use our quotient formula. Oh, out of habit. Almost wrote down f of x for that, but that's not the case. So h prime of x is equal to the denominator times the derivative of the numerator minus the numerator times the derivative of the denominator all over the denominator squared. Alright, so that means our derivative is equal to your denominator, which is x squared plus 4x minus 1 times the derivative of the numerator, which is negative 4x plus 1, minus your numerator, which is negative 2x squared plus x plus 4 times the derivative of the denominator, which is g prime of x, 2x plus 4 all over the denominator squared, which is x squared plus 4x minus 1 squared. Okay, now most of the time you can just leave the denominator like this. You don't have to expand it. Sometimes you want to do it depending on how they want the answer formed. So what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and simplify our terms up top. Okay, so after we do all of our distributing and combining like terms and everything else, we will end up with negative 9x squared minus 4x minus 17 all over. And if we go ahead and distribute that, we can leave it as x squared plus 4x minus 1 squared if you want to. So it'll be x squared plus 4x minus 1 squared, or h prime of x is equal to negative 9x squared minus 4x minus 17 all over x to the 4th power plus 8x to the 3rd plus 14x squared minus 8x plus 1. If you expand that out and go through all of the work. Excuse me. Alright, so at x, well, actually let's add to this problem a little bit. Let's say find h prime at negative 5. Just to kind of give a little bit of extra work. At x equals negative 5, h prime at negative 5 is going to be equal to negative 9 times negative 5 squared minus 4 times negative 5 minus 17. Let me clean up that 17. All over, I'll just use this one here. Negative 5 squared plus 4 times negative 5 minus 1 squared. Alright, so if you go ahead and calculate all of that, you end up with negative 111 over 8. Okay, so you have your h prime of x, either this one or this one. And you have your h prime of negative 5. Alright, so if you are still writing, feel free to press pause. But we're going to go ahead and move on to our next example. Okay, so now for this one, it's going to ask for which values of x does f of x equals x to the third power over 3 minus 2x squared minus 2x plus 6 have a tangent slope of negative 6. Alright, so to kind of help explain what we're looking at or what we're looking for, when you see tangent slope of negative 6, what they mean is where is f prime of x equals negative 6. Okay, so first thing we have to do is find our derivative. Okay, so f prime of x is equal to, that's x to the third over 3. We can just make that 1/3 x to the third. That's 1/3 times the derivative of x to the third minus 2 times the derivative of x squared minus 2 times the derivative of x plus the derivative of 6. Alright, so our f prime of x is equal to 1/3. Derivative of x to the third is 3x squared, because you bring down the 3 and subtract 1. So you have 3x squared minus 2 times the derivative of x squared, bring down the 2 and subtract 1, so that would be 2x. Minus 2, the derivative of x is just 1. Plus, and the derivative of a constant is just 0. Okay, so that means that our f prime of x is equal to, 2 3's cancel out. So that leaves us with just x squared. Minus 2 times 2 is 4, so we have 4x. Minus 2 plus 0, so that just stays the same. So we have our first derivative of f prime of x equals x squared minus 4x minus 2. Okay, so now we want to find at what point do you have a tangent slope of negative 6. Okay, so that means when does f prime of x equal negative 6? Since this is our f prime of x, we just want to know when x squared minus 4x minus 2 equals negative 6. Okay, so if we go ahead and add 6 to both sides, we end up with x squared minus 4x plus 4 equals 0. And from there, we just factor. Okay, so you can see here, actually, this is a perfect square trinomial. So we end up with x minus 2 times x minus 2 equals 0. And since we only need one of those, we know that x will equal 2. Okay, so that means for if you graph this function, when you get to x equals 2, you will have a slope of negative 6 at that point. Alright, so if you are still writing, feel free to press pause. Oh, one quick note, just kind of dawned on me there. Okay, so quick note. Let's say if you go through all of this and you can't factor it. This one you could factor, but let's say you did all of this and you ended up with a trinomial that you could not factor, at least not using real solutions, or you ended up with a complex solution. If you ever factor your derivative and you can only factor it with a complex solution, there are no real solutions, then there's no horizontal tangent. Okay, so if there are no real solutions for f prime of x equals some constant c, because whatever that constant c is, you're going to subtract it and make it equal to 0. So if this one was -6, so if it's f prime of x equals c. Okay, so if there are no real solutions, then the function f of x has no horizontal tangent line. Has no horizontal. Why did I put that there? Has no horizontal tangent lines. There. Alright. So, if you are still writing, feel free to press pause, but we're going to go ahead and move on to our next example. Okay, and that's finding the equation of a tangent line. Okay, so what if we want to find an equation of a tangent line to the graph of f of x equals x squared when x is equal to -2? Okay, so we're going to go ahead and just break this down into steps. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is find your ordered pair x, f of x. Okay, so once you do that, we already know your x is going to equal -2. X is equal to -2, and your f of -2 is equal to, of course, -2 squared, which is 4. Okay, so your x, f of x, is going to equal -2, 4. All right. So your second step is to find your slope. At x equals -2. I probably could have gave that a little more room, but I'll separate it there. Okay, now your slope is just your, of course, your f prime of -2. Okay, so if we know that our f of x is equal to x squared, then our f prime of x, we bring down the 2 and subtract 1, is just going to equal 2x. Okay, so we also know when x equals -2, your f prime of -2 is going to equal 2 times -2. So your f prime of -2 is equal to -4. Okay, so go ahead and circle that one. Okay, because this is our slope or your tangent at x equals -2. All right, so from there, what do we do? Well, we go to our third step, where we use the point slope formula. Okay, and that's y minus y1 equals your slope times x minus x1. Okay, so we have our x1 and our y1. That's our ordered pair up here. Okay, so just a little side note that -2, 4, that's your x1 and your y1. Okay, so we're okay there. And we have our slope, which is -4. I mean -2. Oh, -4. Why did I put -2 there? Oh, actually I had that right. Getting those mixed up. Excuse me. Slope equals -4. Okay, so we go ahead and plug everything in. We have y minus y1, so y minus 4 equals your slope. Remember, that's just your f prime of x, or f prime of c, or whatever that c value is. In this case, our c was -2. Okay, so your slope is -4, so you have -4 x minus x1, so x minus -2. Okay, so if we go ahead and just clean this up a little bit, that's y minus 4 equals -4 times x plus 2. Okay, so we go ahead and distribute that -4. So we have y minus 4 equals -4x minus 8. Go ahead and add 4 to both sides. So we have y equals -4x minus 4. Okay, so that is the equation of the tangent line. So if you were to look at that on a graph, so let's say this is your x and this is your x and y axis, and this is y equals x squared. Let's say this is x equals -2. At x equals -2, at that point, your tangent line would just touch there. And that is the equation of that tangent line. Alright. So if you are still writing, feel free to press pause, but we're going to go ahead and move on to the next example. Okay. So what if we wanted to find the equation of the tangent line to the graph f of x equals 5x to the 3/2, or 3/2 power, plus 9 at x equals 4. And give your answer in slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. Alright, so what I want you to do is go ahead and press pause and try to work this one out on your own. Alright, so I'm assuming you've pressed pause and worked this one out. So we're going to go ahead and verify your answer. And it's just like the one we just did. Okay, so first thing you want to do is find your ordered pair. Okay, so we know that our f of x is 5x to the 3/2 plus 9. F prime of x is equal to, oh, not f prime of x, we're jumping the gun a little bit. So f of x is 5x to the 3/2 plus 9. And at x equals 4, f of 4 is equal to 5 times, and instead of x to the 3/2, x to the 3/2, you clean that up a little bit. instead of x to the 3/2, I'm just going to rewrite it as x to the 1/2 power times 3. All right. So we're going to have 4 to the 1/2 power raised to the 3rd power plus 9. And the reason I did that is because 4 to the 1/2 power is just square root of 4. Which we know is 2. Now it's plus or minus 2, but we're just using the plus for this one. Okay, so that would be f of 4 is equal to 5 times the 4 to the 1/2 power, or square root of 4 is 2. 2 to the 3rd power is 8. Plus 9. Okay? So that means our f of 4 is equal to 49. Okay, so our ordered pair x, f of x, is 4, 49. All right, so we go to our second step, which is find your slope, or in this case, it's f prime of 4. All right, so you have your f prime of x is equal to 5 times the derivative of x to the 3/2 power. So we bring down our exponent of 3/2 times x to the 3/2 minus 1. Plus 9. Can't forget that plus 9. Okay, so that means your f prime of x is going to equal 5 times 3 is 15. So we have 15 over 2. 3/2 minus 2 over 2 is 1/2. And the derivative, oh, actually I should have the derivative of 9. There we go. So the derivative of 9 is just 0, so that disappears. So we end up with our f prime of x here. Now f prime of 4 is 15 over 2 times 4 to the 1/2 power. Okay, so we know 4 to the 1/2 power is just square root of 4, so that's 2. So we have 15 over 2 times 2. The 2's cancel out, so that's just 15. So f prime of 4 equals 15, which is our slope. Well, slope at x equals 4, to be a little more precise. Okay, so you know your third step. You use your point slope form. Y minus y1 equals your slope times x minus x1. So since we know that's our x1 and y1 right there, that's y minus 49 equals 15 times x minus 4. So if we go ahead and distribute that 15 and add the 49 to both sides, you have y equals 15x plus 49 minus 60. Since we just added the 49 and 15 times 4 is 60. So we end up with y equals 15x minus 11. Good. There we go. And that's your equation of the tangent line. At x equals 4. Alright, so if you are still writing, feel free to press pause. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next example. Oops. Alright, so for which values of x does f of x equals 16x to the third power over 3 minus 4x squared plus 6x minus 13 have a tangent line of tangent slope of 5? Alright, so once again, what I want you to do is go ahead and press pause and work on this one yourself. Alright, so I'm assuming you've pressed pause and you've worked this one out. So let's go ahead and verify your answer. Okay. So tangent slope of line 5, really, and that's just saying find where f prime of x equals 5. Alright, so we know that our f of x, just going to rewrite our f of x, equals 16x to the third over 3 minus 4x squared plus 6x minus 13. Actually, with 16x to the third over 3, I'm going to rewrite that just to make it easier. 16 over 3 times x to the third, just to make it easier to differentiate. Alright, so we have f prime of x is equal to 16 over 3 times the derivative of x to the third. So we bring down the 3 and subtract 1. So that's 3x squared minus 4 times the derivative of x squared. Bring down the 2, so that's 2x, plus the derivative of 6x, or derivative of x, so plus 6 times 1. The derivative of negative 13 is just 0. So we can put minus 0, but you don't have to. Okay, so you have f prime of x. Since the two 3's cancel out, you have 16x squared minus 8x plus 6. Okay. So f prime of x equal to 5, or our tangent line slope of 5. Oh, that probably shouldn't be there. I don't know why that's bugging me, but tangent slope, I'll say of 5. That's pretty good. I'll leave it like that. I don't know why the wording is just seemed like it could have been better of the problem, but I'll leave it like that. Okay, so f prime of x equals 5 just means that your tangent slope of 5, 16x squared minus 8x plus 6 equals 5. So if we subtract 5 from both sides, we end up with 16x squared minus 8x plus 1 equals 0. Alright, so what we have here is a perfect square trinomial. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and just factor this one on the side here. So 16x squared, we're just going to make that 4x squared minus 8x plus 1 squared. Okay, so perfect square trinomial is a squared minus 2ab plus b squared equals a minus b squared. So our a is equal to 4x and our b is equal to 1. If negative 2ab is equal to negative 8x, then we know we can just factor this into 4x minus 1 squared. Okay, so negative 2ab is actually equal to negative 2 times 4x times 1, which is negative 8x. So we're good. So this can actually be factored to equal negative 4x, 4x minus 1 squared equals 0. Or just 4x minus 1 equals 0 once you square root both sides. That means x is equal to 1/4. Alright, so if you are still writing, feel free to press pause. But we're going to go ahead and move on to our last example. Okay, so for the function k of x is equal to 8x minus 6 times x minus 6 times negative x squared minus 2, find the derivative of k of x using the product rule. Okay, now this is a little bit different than the product rule that we've been using because you have 3 factors. Okay, when you have the product of 3 functions, use k prime of x is equal to f prime of x times g of x times h of x plus f of x times g prime of x times h of x plus f of x times g of x times h prime of x. Okay, so if you're looking for a nice stress-free way to remember this, just write for your derivative fgx, fgh, 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 and then put the derivative for the f, then the derivative for the g, then the derivative for the h. So really just all fgh 3 times in a row, but for each term you have f prime, g prime, h prime. So that's an easy way to remember this. And it does the same thing if you have 4 terms. You just write, say, FGRH, FGRH. You write it 4 times, and then you just go through and make the derivative for that term. Okay, so for the first term, you check the F. For the second term, the G. The third term, the H, and keep going from there. Alright, so we know that k of x is equal to 8x minus 6 times x minus 6 times negative x squared minus 2. So of course this is your f of x, your g of x, and your h of x. Alright, so we have to find the derivative of each of those terms. So f of x equals 8x minus 6. So that means f prime of x is equal to 8. G of x equals x minus 6. So g prime of x is going to equal 1. Just the derivative of x, that disappears. Okay, so your h of x is equal to negative x squared minus 2. So your h prime of x is going to equal negative 2x. Alright, so now that we have that, we just go ahead and plug it into our handy dandy little formula here. Okay, so k prime of x, and I'm just going to leave off the x's there just to make it nice and to the point. So f prime g h plus f g prime h plus f g h prime. Like I said, same thing, I just left off the function notation. Okay, so that's going to equal your f prime is 8 times your g prime, or times your g, which is x minus 6, times your h, which is negative x squared minus 2, plus your f, which is 8x minus 6, times your g prime, which is 1, times your h, which is negative x squared minus 2, plus your f, which is 8x minus 6, times your g, which is x minus 6, times your h prime, which is negative 2x. Alright, so if we go ahead and simplify each of those terms, pull this all the way over to the left because it's going to get a little bit messy. So if we simplify this one by distributing that and then foiling it out, we'll end up with negative 8x to the third power plus 48x squared minus 16x squared plus 96. Plus, go ahead and stretch this one out. We have negative 8x to the third plus 6x squared minus 16x plus 12. Plus, we go ahead and expand that one. We have negative 16x to the third plus 108x squared. And I'm running out of room, so I'm going to put it down here, minus 72x. Okay, so once we go ahead and combine like terms and cancel out and all that good stuff, we will end up with negative 32x to the third plus 162x squared minus 104x plus 108. Okay, and that's our derivative when you have three functions being multiplied. Alright, so hopefully these examples help you get a clearer understanding, and I will see you on the next video.